Welcome in, guys, to a live reaction show of the Hawks Eye. It's your host, Bryce Coots, and finally, I've been able to corner him now that he's relocated himself back down to the, I guess it'd be the east, southeast area, kind of the United States.
I say
Dan.
East Coast. It's not quite on the coast, but it's close enough. Yeah.
So I've been able to get Dan via
Eastern time zone. Yeah.
I've been able to get Dan back on, or actually for the first time on the Hawks Eye. This is kind of cool because the last time we talked, it was on the Seahawks Syndicate. I was all in the midst of changing everything over.
Yeah.
But now that I've got situated, it's great to finally have you on the show, Dan.
It's good to be here. And hopefully I won't slip up and call it the other thing. Have you done that yet? How many times have you done that?
I have not. I caught myself. The beauty of it is because it's the Hawks. Yeah. If I think I'm going to say it, I can catch myself enough that I can switch to the I instead of the other word that I'm not going to use. Yeah, Dan, but you know what? We're going to talk all Abe Lucas right now, how this affects this team going forward, and a couple other things. And we'll have a fun game for everyone to see how well Dan can do under a little bit of pressure towards the end of the show. Yeah. It'll be a quick show, everyone, like maybe 30 minutes or so, but we'll get into all of that and what Dan's been up to lately right after this. All right. Well, let's get into it, Dan. Abe Lucas signed his extension, 3 years, $46 million. I know that you were at the gym when this broke because I texted you being like, "Hey, we signed Abe Lucas."
You're the one who broke the news to me.
So what were your initial reaction to Abe finally getting this extension done?
Surprise. First of all, because, I think we've probably talked about it on one of our shows or the Syndicate or something that because of the uncertainty and the injury history the last 2 years and how tough that was for him, that, maybe it would make sense that they would want to see, first of all, they would want to see at least most of a healthy season again. Schneider talks about how extensions do happen at the sort of the mid-season mark as well, but also that Abe would want to maybe bank on himself a little bit and see if he can put some healthy tape out there and potentially raise his profile a little bit and get closer to the top of that market. But I think just who Abe is and just kind of how his personality is, there's a whole bunch of different layers to this. And the first one that stood out right away, as soon as you let me know what was going on, I was able to check it and see the Garofalo report, is that obviously they have confidence. Nobody knows that knee better than the Seahawks do, except for Abe and his doctors. Like they have all the medicals. They've seen the scans. They've seen the work ethic. They've seen, how he recovers. They've seen that he didn't miss a single day in camp, all of that. And then just how he's played and how he's fit into the system and incorporated with the new coaching staff, that it just immediately filled me with confidence that he's good to go and long-term, that it's not a chronic thing that we were all worried it might be when even Pete Carroll didn't know what was going on when this thing first cropped up. And then also that just another building block on this offensive line as we look ahead to finally getting some continuity. Cheapest offensive line in the league until about 8 hours ago, youngest offensive line in the league. Every single player on this in this offensive line group, except for Josh Jones, who himself is only 27 years old, but was brought in from the outside on their rookie contract, that, hey, we're putting this thing together, and John Schneider is intent on keeping it together because this is only the second offensive lineman he's drafted and then extended outside of Justin Britt. So it's just another step towards, finally getting this thing figured out, I think, up front.
That's kind of how I looked at it too, Dan, was when I saw this news break, I went, okay, they know the health of the knee. They know that Abe Lucas is okay. And I think a part of it too is what we've seen every time Abe's been out of the lineup to when Abe has been in the lineup for the Seahawks and how different this team is. He brings a level of nastiness to this group. He brings a level of, I think, in some respects, accountability to this group. Because when you look at what Abe has done when he has been healthy and has played, he is one of the top right tackles in the NFL, and he's still young. I still think he has actually another ceiling to get to now that he's been able to get fully healthy again that we haven't seen since his rookie year, where I think a lot of us thought he actually played better than Charles Cross on the right at tackle than Charles Cross did. And that's where I think it's really interesting with this. The deal itself, in my opinion, I think it's going to be in 2 years, it's going to look like peanuts. It's going to be like, wow, we've got this guy that's a top 10 right tackle on a deal for a guy that's a top 20 tackle. Like, that's where I think it is. And obviously there are incentives they've stated to, see, increase the value of it. But the other thing I think that's a big thing about this, and Abe kind of talked about today in his press conference, was it's a dream come true to stay home. And he's only ever played football really in the state of Washington. Yeah. Archbishop Murphy High School to Washington State for your beloved Cougars, even though I'm a Husky and I just, kind of, I'll get over that part of this, but I love Abe Lucas. Yeah. And then to play for the Seattle Seahawks. And sometimes that does pull on guys. Like if the money's maybe not exactly 100% what they were hoping for, but close enough, they'll take that deal, because truly for Abe, it is a hometown deal. Like he is a homegrown product through and through. So I think those are some factors. The other part of this, though, for me is now who's next, right? On this offensive line, we've got Anthony Bradford, he's got a couple years left. Jalen Snell's got a couple years left. We just drafted Grace Abel. So that leaves Charles Cross. I wonder how much this extension affects Charles Cross's talks coming up in, probably a few months. I think they're going to be working on this through the season. Yes, I know they have the 5th-year option, but to get both of these bookends sealed and set up for the future here in Seattle, it makes it seem a little bit brighter.
Yeah, Abe, just going back to your first point, he's got a chance to pull a Marcus Trufant, right? Played his high school football in Washington, went to Washington State, or just stayed in state for his entire career and retired as a Seahawk. Abe's got a chance to do that now. And you have to think that for him, he said a couple of weeks ago that this last offseason, the first one he's had to really attack in full, healthy in 2.5 years, he said was the hardest thing he's ever had to do as a professional athlete. And so again, back to, when you initially texted me and let me know what was going on and my initial surprise, like maybe it wasn't, the more I thought about it, maybe from Abe's standpoint, it wasn't that big of a surprise because he has been through hell the last 2.5 years. And while he might have thought, and his agents certainly did, I'm sure it was part of the discussions at some point, like, hey, you sure you don't want to just slow play this a little bit and see if you can increase your market? Like he probably just he's getting security and just put it to bed. And with everything he's been through for the last 2.5 years, to know that he's taken care of financially and he knows where he's going to be and he can move forward. With the Cross thing, it's fascinating. It's, Schneider said again recently when he spoke at the VMAC a couple of weeks ago that that ownership has made it pretty clear that they don't like extending players 2 years before the end of their deal. And now that they've exercised the 5th-year option on Cross, he has 2 years left on his deal. And that was the first time he ever really credited ownership with that philosophy, right? We always just assumed it was his and Pete's or his and Joey Lane or what have you. And so, is this a loophole? Is that a technicality when there's a 5th-year option involved? Because Charles Cross never made a Pro Bowl, never hit any of those escalators, his number next year is $17.5 million. I mean, for left tackles, that's a crazy bargain. I don't think they're in any hurry to get Cross done now. And as recently as a couple of weeks ago at camp, he had said that there was no contact. That could change. This is when those conversations really ramp up. I still wouldn't be surprised if Cross is next year. And that they, you and I talked before we hit record, and I'm sure we can touch on a little bit that Brady Henderson just mentioned in his story on this, that there has been an attempt to try to sign Kobe Bryant to an extension before the last year of his rookie deal, that they haven't been able to get anything done. The more things you can get done now with that cap space they have, and Abe's deal in particular, the number looks really team friendly. We'll see how it's structured. It was interesting how they worded the initial report, Mike Garafolo. Usually they give you the big number, like the most number, the maximum it could be. And then you find out later when the details come out that incentives are the only way for him to get to that number. But this was 3 years, $46 million plus incentives. So it'll be interesting to see how much more there is to that. I think right now, based on these numbers, about 15 and change $1 million a year puts him, I think, 15th in the league. That's with the money he was already going to make in the last year of his rookie deal as a third round draft pick. Like, that's not going to eat up a whole lot of that cap space this year. They won't have to do it now next year, right? And it'll just leave them more flexibility when they have to deal with some of those other contracts that are up.
And so, to your point, the comments are going off right now, Dan, with a bunch of stuff. And so everyone that's in the comments, appreciate you guys all being in there. We will get to some of those at a point in the show today. So, Dan, the next part I want to talk to you about is this. Is the future of the O-line now brighter with this extension? And to our point that we just talked about a little bit, we anticipate Charles Cross will get an extension with the Seahawks, whether it be towards the end of this season or in the early offseason next year. Does this look like a brighter future for this offensive line?
100%. Because until this news broke, we weren't certain that Abe Lucas was going to get a second contract. There was always the possibility, whenever we talked about this issue, we had to consider the fact that maybe because of that knee injury history, that they wouldn't be that willing to pay him what it would take to keep him from testing the market next offseason, that we might be right back in the market for a right tackle next year, either trying to keep Josh Jones around or hoping Mason Richmond turns into something, or maybe having to use a high draft pick on a right tackle. It's a good tackle class next year, right? Now that we don't have to do that, it frees all those picks up for other things. It absolutely, it sends a message, first of all, that I think the clearest message John Schneider's ever sent in his 15 years, that he is adamant and intent, like he'd been telling us for the 6 weeks or the 6 months leading up to the draft. Hey, we're going to fix this thing. We're going to do it right. Spent a first round pick on a guard. They'd never done that before. Now giving Abe Lucas all that money, that's another step in that direction. So you look ahead now, you start to say, as you did, Jalen Sundell, you control him for a couple more years, right? Gray Zabel's got 3 years plus a 5th-year option now. You don't have to worry about extending him until there's a 3 in the year. The only question really moving forward is right guard. And if Anthony Bradford performs, and we're going to be having this conversation next year about, do you pay him, right? Continuity is so important when it comes to offensive lines. I think most of us can see now that the talent is there. We can see that the scheme and the coaching are there. And, tip of the iceberg, we've only seen a small sample size, and it's only in preseason about what it looks like. But I can tell you also, with all the training camp access I had this year, just being able to see it up close, like, this is the closest they've been since the Super Bowl at finding a group that works, that's talented, and keeping them together.
I agree with everything, Dan, that you just touched on. I do think the O-line future is brighter. Now, again, we have to see them, put it to actual use in this first game. It's going to be a test right out of the bat versus the 49ers this Sunday. But I think you've put things in the right direction. You've corrected the ship, if, speaking purposes, in the right direction. Before, it looked like it was heading towards an iceberg with this offensive line, or we may have actually hit the iceberg. I don't know how you want to look at it that way with the way the offensive line's been over the last few years.
That's how it felt.
But we kind of hit it, but we've somehow, shut the ballasts down, and we've been able to right it. And, John Schneider's been able to correct it. So I agree. I think it is brighter. I think once Cross is, signed, and if Bradford does play well, you have 5 consistent starters. Because I really, I found it really interesting with, Mike McDonald's comments about, okay, if Bradford or Zabel were to get injured, who bumps over to guard? And it's basically Jalen Sundell, and that was indicative on their depth chart.
Yep.
So we know that backup guard is definitely an area that they may add to. I still have the belief that after week 1, they will be signing a veteran guard. I think Shane Lemieux is probably the one that they may sign, and that way they're not guaranteeing his money like, the veteran trick. Hey, we sign you after week 1. We don't guarantee your full contract for the entirety of the season. Yeah. I think that's something they may do just to give a little bit of ease to the mind of the fans and themselves, that, hey, like, if we lose one of our top 2 guards, we're not also having to move our center out of his spot. Because I really think Jalen Sundell is going to play quite well at center. And I feel bad for Olu, because you basically got, Wally pipped in this situation with, getting injured and stuff. But then to your point, he was doing quite well in camp. But I just think Sundell's a better fit in the scheme. I think he offers you a little bit more. And so if you can keep those five together, that Zabel, Cross, Bradford, Lucas, Sundell, that could be a really formidable front five for the next 4 seasons. And then that allows you to actually develop and start following that Philadelphia Eagle style of building an O-line where it's like, yeah, we keep guys in here. We have these backups developing in behind, and then that we can kind of slowly fill gaps as we go. So that'll be interesting. But let's move on to the next topic here, Dan, which is who is next to collect out of this 2020 draft class. So you mentioned earlier that, and to actually mention what Brady Henderson wrote in his article, he goes, Lucas was part of the 2022 draft class that produced starters with each of the first 6 selections. Those players are all eligible for extensions, and Schneider hinted recently that one could be in the works. The Seahawks had talks with another member of that class, safety Kobe Bryant, but haven't been able to agree to a deal. And we talked about it a little bit off air, Dan. The safety market isn't great. Like, you're not going to get a whole bunch of money right now if you're a safety in this market. I wonder if it's a Kobe Bryant's betting on himself and his group is betting on himself this year and potentially trying to raise that, floor of that contract. Or is it maybe they've approached Seattle and Seattle's not willing to talk because they do have Nick Eamon-Wari there as well, who they just drafted this year. Who do you think is one next to collect? And what do you think about that Kobe Bryant situation?
I think it's one of the secondary guys. It's either Kobe or Reek. And they're different stories, right? Kobe was a guy that kind of disappointed as a rookie and so ends up getting shifted to safety and then ends up looking like a natural there and is now a mainstay. I'd like to see him be the first to sign. And if that surprises people, it's just because I think you get out in front of potentially having a second really good year as a full-time safety, and then the dollar value goes up. Now, the same could happen with Reek, and the top of the corner market is insane right now for young corners. But with some of the questions that we had last year, and some of the questions that we think the Seahawks had with Reek about just commitment and focus, this is pure speculation. They love him, but I think if they were 100% sure about all those other aspects of his game, I think they'd be pushing really hard to get him signed now to try and save a little bit of money, right? Before it potentially goes up if he has a huge year. I still think, Brady said talks are ongoing. I think now that the Lucas thing is done, right? Maybe they can just turn their focus to him. He's the one that makes the most sense. I think it's the most practical. And in some ways, it might, even though it might cost a little bit more next year than it would right now, that, you're going to have more flexibility with some of the other contracts you can adjust next year. You can do that big deal for Reek then. Kobe's the one that makes the most sense now, and I hope they keep pushing forward and getting that done.
I'm a big Kobe Bryant guy. You know that. I've been on his bandwagon since they drafted him and was one of the first people that was like, hey, you need to move him to safety. He's not a corner. Get him out of the nickel. Get him into the safety spot. And we saw the immediate impacts last year with Mike McDonald once Rayshon Jenkins went down, what he could do.
Yeah,
I agree. The practicality of it, I think you can get Kobe still at a very team-friendly cost right now. He's only really going to have a year and a half of starter experience to really pull from in those negotiations. Yes, they drafted Nick Eamon-Wari, but with that, I think comes with, is he really going to be someone that's going to be ready to take that big of a jump next year into playing in the back end and not down in front? And with the way I think Mike McDonald wants to use him as the X factor that he can be, you may want to have that other safety that you can trust back there where you can bring Nick down into the box and leave, Julian back there with someone else. Now, do you want that to be Jarek Reed or Ty Okada, or do you want it to be Kobe Bryant, who's already building that dynamic and relationship with Julian Love? They played really well together last year. Sometimes you want to keep that going. So I agree. I think, I think Kobe makes the most sense. However, I will say the closer to the end of the season, if Reek is playing well and playing, I mean, like consistently well, the more I think they start negotiating his contract and keeping him around, because I think they want to keep him and Devin. As much as I've been one of the people, and you know it as much as anyone, that hasn't been the biggest fan of Reek because of his inconsistencies and all the other things, There is something that seems to be different about him this year. I think he may have kind of got one of those conversations in the offseason of like, hey, you need to wake up and start being a consistent pro if you want to stick and get the money that you think you deserve. So I think it's going to be between Kobe and Reek on who gets it. I just think Kobe, maybe if I was to put a percentage, I'd say it's 60-40 in Kobe's favor right now to get that next extension.
There's another possibility, and that's that they're done. Like there's so much uncertainty about the other guys that are eligible for extensions out of that class, right? With Walker and Mafe, I think they need to show us more that they might just be done. And if they are, that's okay, because they have all the money in the world. And when I say that, I want to qualify it, because I do think that some fans tend to overstate how quickly money can dry up when you have cap space, right? And you can't just look at the raw cap number. There's different ways you can structure contracts. We know that, right? You can backload them, you can front load them, whatever, you can move them around. Typically the Seahawks, when they do long-term extensions, the first year hit is a little bit lower, and year 2 is kind of where they bury a lot of the money. But it's the other flexibility, right? Go to over the cap. If you're really into this stuff, dig a little deeper and go and play with the calculator and look at the other contracts that can be adjusted. You might see whatever it is. I haven't checked it in the last couple of days. Last time I checked, it was $53 million, something like that, available for next year. Some of that obviously is going to go to Abe Lucas now. But then you look at Uchenna Nwosu's deal. You look at Leo Williams and how easy it is to get extra money from that. If Sam Darnold goes out and has a good year, and they feel comfortable with it, you could take some money from his deal. There are other places you can take money from and get anything done that they want to get done with signing their own guys next year, even if they all blow up, right? It's a good problem to have if it happens. And maybe it gets to a point where you can't afford them all, but they're more likely to be able to than not, is what I'm trying to say.
I think you're right on all fronts there, Dan. I think they could be just done and see what next year possesses. And I said on one of your tweets that I think it's Lucas, Cross, and Bryant that are the next 3 out of this class to get their extensions. And they may let K9, Reek, and Mafe test the market and come back and be like, hey, is the money out there going to reset the market? If it's not, okay, then we'll work out a deal. If it is going to reset the market, then we really have to think about our priorities and how we're structuring this going forward. So that's where I look at it with the who's next. But before we get into the questions that have been posted into the chat and everything, and I appreciate everyone being in there, folks. Thank you so much for all the comments and everything. And there's 386 of you, which for my new channel is great. And if you haven't already, I'll put this up there. If you're just watching for the first time on Twitter or on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. I am just broke 800. I am closing in on 1,000. And as Dan can tell you, once you get over that 1,000 subscriber mark, a lot of doors open for you with the algorithm and everything in YouTube. And it allows me to do a little bit more and get the content out there to everyone. So please, if you haven't, like and subscribe to the channel. But before we get into viewer Q&A, Dan, we're going to play a quick game, which is a new thing I do with all my guests, which is the 2-minute drill rapid fire, where I'm going to put your Seahawk knowledge and your passion to the test. And we'll get into that right after this. Go! All right, rapid fire 2-minute drill edition, Dan. So I'm going to ask you 10 questions, and you just give me your answers as quickly as you can. So question 1, first Seahawk to score a touchdown this season.
Kenneth Walker.
Okay. Question 2, most underrated player on the roster.
Damn. Okay, let me try. I'm trying to be great. I think it might be Tyrese Knight.
Okay. Question 3, who leads the Seattle Seahawks in sacks this year?
Derek Hall.
Question 4, over under 2.5 wins against the NFC rivals this year.
Oh, over.
Okay. Question 5, which rookie has the biggest impact in 2025?
Gray Zabel.
Question 6, Seahawks MVP this season. Your pick on who you think it's going to be.
Let's say Leonard Williams.
Okay. Question 7, throwback blue or action green, which uniform wins?
Throwback, 100 times out of 100. And okay. I like that. And I like action green.
Question 8. If you could bring back one former Seahawk to help this team, who is it?
A former Seahawk in their prime?
In their prime.
Cortez Kennedy.
Okay. Question 9. Does Seattle host a playoff game this year?
Yes.
Question 10. One bold prediction for the Seahawks season you'll put your name on.
Devin Witherspoon is going to pick off 5 balls.
Okay. And that wraps up the 2-minute drill with Dan Viens. All right, guys. So we'll get into some of these comments you guys have been putting up there. I've got a couple of them started. So we'll first start off with our buddy Dan. John McGrath's in here. Always appreciate John in the comments. He goes, great move by John Schneider to keep Lucas in Seattle. I was so tired of seeing our offensive linemen leave and take the next step with other teams. Keeping this O-line intact for the future is awesome. I totally agree.
You know what? Schneider deserves all the credit, and I'm glad people are finally giving it to him, but so does Mike McDonald. I think John Schneider was intent, just as he did with Pete, of delivering the football team that his head coach wants. And Mike McDonald, from the day he set foot in the facility, has been adamant of the style of football he wants to play. And to play that style of football on offense to complement his defense, you have to be physical and you have to be able to protect the quarterback and run the football. And to do that, you have to have talent up front, but you have to have cohesion. You have to keep them together, and you have to you just have to dial that in. And I think he did that in large part because his coach is demanding it.
Next question here comes from Shane, all the way, I believe, down in Australia, if I'm correct, down there. And he goes, the only thing he had to prove was his health. He's a great player with a great mentality and toughness. I agree. I think that was the biggest obstacle of this contract extension for Seattle was, could Abe stay healthy the entire, off-season through training camp, which he didn't miss a practice. He never popped up on the injury report, which, by the way, quick note, guess who's popped up on the injury report now for San Francisco? Christian McCaffrey has a calf injury.
Oh,
I wonder if those are Achilles. Achilles are starting to act up again.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
So, little nugget there just popped up on my feed right now as of like 3 minutes ago that McCaffrey's got a calf injury and he's on the limited participation watch. So that's, and Shane, I appreciate you, man. I noticed you wanted to put a super chat in there. I cannot accept super chats till I'm over 1,000 subs. So once that happens, I will make sure to turn that feature on, but appreciate the support as always. We got John back in here, goes, this is the best O-line we've had in over a decade. So happy that we're keeping it together. Abe's aggressive play style can continue to rub off on the rest of the guys. Stay lean and mean.
I'll tell you something else that it means. And it's not just his aggressive play style. It's how he attacked his rehab. It's how he attacks everything. Like every single day I was at a camp, he's the first guy out there. Even when he, the remarkable thing about Abe is you think about 2 years ago when he came back for the last 6 games of the year. And in particular, I remember the Pittsburgh Steelers game where he clearly was not himself. He was, it just didn't look natural. You could tell he was favoring the leg, especially like in between plays, like running back to the huddle, stuff like that. He really seemed to be laboring. And he was still, even 50, 60% of what he was when he was healthy was made that line better the moment he stepped back out on the field. His tenacity with how he approached this, his attitude about it, everything, and the way he goes about his business. He's very workmanlike. He's a little quieter, right? Which is funny because he's a total metalhead, which I love. I think, Mike McDonald and John Schneider are always going to reward that. And if you can put the talent and those qualities together, those guys are going to get the deals here and they're going to stick around. And I think this roster might be full of more of those types of guys than we've seen since the LOB.
I totally agree. He's got that lunch pail attitude kind of guy, which I think is what Mike McDonald wants. To your point earlier, those are the guys he wants in the building. There was no drama this offseason with this team. None. Like, yeah, they had their little spat with Green Bay, but it wasn't like we've seen in the past. So just to give everyone a little bit of an update here, the Seahawks just released their injury report for today's practice. So Jake Bobo, limited participant. Torrey Horton was full participating, which was great. Chenna and Cody White both were limited participations. And then there were 3 did not participate. 1, Tariq Woolen with an illness, so I think he may be okay by game day. Derek Young with a hamstring. He went from limited to now did not participate. And the new one that got added that wasn't on there yesterday, Anthony Bradford with a back, did not participate today. After we just talked about if he can stay healthy, that's not what you want to see on your Thursday practice report, because hopefully by Friday he's up to a limited participant, and maybe it was just a small back spasm set or something today, because I really want to see Jalen Sundell play center. Like, I'm really amped for that. That's one of my biggest things I'm amped for, Dan. So that was the Seahawks injury report.
They've done so much work to get to this point, and that group of 5 looks so good together that, let's, fingers crossed, let's hope he's back out there. My back hurts too, but I don't have to play a football game on Sunday.
That's fair. And we'll get Shane back in here one more time. He goes, it almost feels like how they flipped the D-line from the team's weakness to a strength almost overnight.
Yeah.
Great to see. Yeah, they addressed that after that abysmal year where our biggest signing for that D-line was Benson Mayowa. They flipped that switch and changed how they were going to address the D-line going forward, and we saw immediate improvement. And now I agree, you're seeing that now with this offensive line. And it starts with the Gray Zabel pick and locking up guys that have been here that have been developing. Yeah. So next on here, we got Amy Holmes, and she goes, smart move. John Schneider says, hold my beer. Love having Amy in the chat as always. She goes, I certainly hope they live up to the hype this week. And I think she's referring to the O-line versus San Francisco 49ers D-line. I think that they will. I think they're going to be able to run over that young San Francisco defensive front, because there is a lot of NFL inexperience on that D-line.
Yeah, and those guys always take the longest to kind of assimilate themselves to the NFL. And some of those guys have been banged up. Michael Williams has kind of been on and off the injury report, and there's been some concern down there about Alfred Collins, and he hasn't looked all that good, and he's been listed at second actually on the depth chart. He's not starting. Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, and I'm going to get into it, in more detail tomorrow on a preview show. I spent some time last night looking at that 49ers depth chart and that roster. And I try to be as objective as I can. And I give credit where credit's due. And just this last offseason, we did an inventory of how many blue chip players each team in the division had. And far and away, the 49ers had the most. I think I had them at 11. I mean, I have all the utmost respect in the world for the talent they've had over there, but so much of it's walked out the door. They're relying so much on a few key veterans, guys that are getting up there in age, like Trent Williams, guys that are, injury prone in Christian McCaffrey. But that defense, man, if you did like a blind resume and you just showed that roster, and it didn't, and you could maybe take Nick Bosa's name off of there, right? And you slap Tennessee Titans on it, people would be predicting it to be a bottom, a 30th ranked defense. Nothing inspires fear or awe, I don't think, in the opposition. And then 6 months ago, looking ahead, or whenever the schedule came out, right, 4 or 5 months ago, looking ahead to this, I thought, okay, well, the Seahawks defense is still going to have their hands full with that offense because they brought that entire offense back intact. Well, then they traded Debo, right? Then they didn't add to the offensive line at all. So if Trent Williams goes down, I think they're in a whole heap of trouble. Their wide receivers started falling like flies. Ayuk's not back. Jennings is going to play, but he's still kind of banged up. Pearsall's still improving. That's a razor thin roster. And I know their fans would probably look at ours and go, who do you got? But, we know. And there are guys that have been there and they've played and they've been together. And that's not something that they can say.
I agree. And so here we go. Here's Brian Kenko comes in. He goes, 2 of my favorite people in 12 Nation. Great stuff, fellas. Appreciate it, Brian. We've got Olgan here. He goes, I think they better sign Woolen or it's going to get expensive. That's a fair point. If Woolen has a good year this year, we could be seeing, his group. I don't think he'll get what Lenore got or some of those guys just because due to the inconsistencies he's had. I think he could get just below that, though. We're not talking like 10 million overall below. We're talking like maybe it'll be like 5 million below what some of those bigger contracts were in the off season.
Yeah, he's not getting Surtain money, right? It's
no.
Just, but they're prepared for that, and they know that. Mm-hmm. And they've they've paid elite corners top of the market money
they have
before, right? We've seen it happen. And if they really value them at that, they'll do it. And if they don't, then they'll turn elsewhere, right? And so at the end of the day, you try to keep all the good players you can, the players that you think fit the program, the players that exhibit all the qualities you want them to exhibit and that help you win on Sundays. And if he goes out and does that, they'll figure it out.
Amy comes back in. She goes, I'm for Reek signing and Kobe. We are as well, Amy. My only thing, Dan, to your point just now that they've signed elite corners, they've never had to do 2 elite corners.
Yeah, true.
And that's the one thing I think will be interesting is I said it on my season prediction show, which if any of you haven't seen, it's on the YouTube channel and on Spotify. So go on over there, listen to it, watch it. I think that Devin Witherspoon becomes a top 5 corner this year because I think he'll get to play more outside. I predict that he's going to get at least 4 interceptions this year. And I think that's going to be something that will make this conversation a little bit more interesting as the season goes on, especially if Reek plays just as well.
But you don't have
Prime comes in.
You don't have to do that until the year after, right? So you can stagger it a little bit. And then we might be talking about a rookie quarterback contract at that point too. I mean, you never really know what's going to happen as you move forward.
Prime comes in. He goes, I'm ambivalent on Reek, but we can see how bought in he's in, or he is. He's insanely talented, but everyone around him loves to play ball. His heart might grow like the Grinch. That just gave me such a good visual for that.
Here's something I want to say about Reek, and I was talking about this on Twitter a little bit today. The first thing that almost always comes up, and I'm surprised we haven't actually seen it in the comments. Maybe it's because our viewers are so smart. Is somebody immediately goes to, I don't want to pay that guy because he's unwilling to hit. That's exactly what someone said to me. Doesn't like to hit. That's bullshit. It's if you go back and look at his UTSA tape. He's coming up and laying dudes out and sacrificing his body and flying around. And you see reps of him doing that as a rookie too. Second year is when that reputation kind of started. Well, he was playing with a banged up shoulder the whole year. When you're 6'5" and skinny like that dude is, like it's if you're favoring your shoulder, and I don't think it was ever completely healthy that year, like that makes it tougher. And so I think that gets overblown a little bit. Also, if you're just an average tackler at corner, but an elite cover guy, you're going to get paid and you're going to want to keep those guys around anyway. Right. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, and I agree. And I was one of Reek's more harsh critics last year when it came to the tackling, because I had seen that ability from him on his college tape to come up and hit. And so then when you go back 2 years to his shoulder injury and so on, it was like, okay, like if you now become hesitant because you're coming off this injury, I'm interested to see this year. Like if Reek comes up and sticks somebody this year, I will have no questions about that ever again. It's just something I'm curious about. But an interesting comment did come into the chat here, Dan, and our fellow friend John McGrath wanted me to remind you of this. Don't forget to remind Dan that we changed his mind about the Seahawks going 13-4.
Oh, you guys are going to take credit for that? Or maybe
I have been living on that island, Dan, with John. We've been sitting there. We've been drinking our beers on the beach, and John's been waving the 13-4 Seahawks flag there, and we've been very lonely on 13-4 Island. But then we saw your life raft drift across, and you've come and join us over here. It's great to have you over on this island.
Well, let's just hope we're all right.
I'm good with what, and if we're wrong and they're 12-5, I'll be okay with sacrificing one win for a 12-5 finish. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Ol comes in and goes, love the format, Bryce. I appreciate that, guys. I'm trying out new things. I like to bring in a couple different things we haven't done before on the show, so I'm glad you guys are noticing and paying attention.
I'll tell you what, man.
Go ahead.
You're doing some good stuff. Like I'm gonna have to step up my game. Like, I just got in the last 6 weeks, I've had to pack everything in the car, go West Coast, East Coast, set everything back up again, and it's like, I haven't had time to focus on those little minutia things. But man, I got to step it up. I got to keep up with the Hawk side. Like your stuff's looking sweet.
Hey, you taught me, Brandon Kane, and a bunch of you guys. I've watched you guys for a very long time. You guys are really kind of the pioneers in it and really, pushed me in certain directions, and I appreciate it. It's helped me find my groove a bit, and now I'm trying to get into that daily content or daily-ish content with you guys, and it's a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying having conversations like this on the regular. But Rockman comes in here, Dan. He goes, I said Knight the second it came out of your mouth, so that's back to our 12 or 2-minute drill there.
Right.
So let's see what else we got in here. Here we go. Shane comes in with, I think we all like and respect CMC. Gotta hang out with his dad for a day in 99 when Broncos Chargers came to Australia. I agree. I really do respect CMC's game. I think what he did going from Carolina to San Francisco and really becoming at that point the best back in the NFL. It's just unfortunate when you see these players start having these type of injuries come up, especially for a player that his legs are kind of a very crucial part to what he does so well, because he's not a big bruiser back. He is a guy with change of direction and his ability to be an effective receiver out of the backfield. And if it's calf injuries again, that's kind of what started the problem last year with his Achilles.
Yeah, and I never root for injuries. You know, some fans might see this news today and think, yes, we might not have to face. I want to play a team at our best, and I want to play a team at their best, right? So that'd be a bummer if he wasn't out there. Actually, I want to see this Mike Macdonald defense go against that offense at full strength, or at least as close to it as you can get.
Here's a good one from John. He goes, what do you guys think the odds are of Paul becoming a starter at linebacker this year? Also, do you guys think that Reek can regain his rookie production and become a true shutdown corner? So we'll answer the first part of that one, John, because I think we've kind of dabbled on the Reek part quite a bit. For Paul, I don't know if he becomes a starter. Like, I could see him spot starting if there's an injury. I think they really like Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight. However, I think if Knight doesn't take a step this year, Dan, and actually like improve from what he did as a rookie, because there were some issues that still came up in his game as we saw through parts of last season. I think next offseason in the training camp, if Seattle's able to retain Paul and keep him and sign him to a contract, I think Paul may push Knight next year in training camp for that weak side linebacker role next to Ernest Jones.
That's a bold statement right there. I already said Tyrese Knight was my most underrated guy. He's a guy that they really like. He was obviously Mike Macdonald's first draft pick. Really, he was the first guy of his tenure that he put a stamp on and influenced the pick. And you and I even saw it in camp. They like to bring him off the edge. He can do some other things. I look forward to seeing his game expanded a little bit this year. Like, that's a big leap too. First, he's got to make the 53-man roster. He's not on it right now. Then he's got to beat out Drake Thomas. They love Drake Thomas, right? And then Tyrese Knight would have to play poorly. If I had to bet, I would say Tyrese Knight is a long-term kind of a mainstay at that weak side linebacker spot moving forward.
Yeah, I really liked Paul's tape coming out, and Mike Macdonald even alluded to it, that they'd done a lot of work on Paul coming out of this draft class. So that's for me where, again, if Knight stays and gets a bit better, I think Paul maybe becomes I think I'll rephrase what I said, Dan. I think Paul has a more likelier chance towards the middle end of this season to maybe overtake Drake Thomas, even though they really like Drake Thomas. If Paul can prove he has the mental abilities to wear a green dot if needed, contribute on special teams, do those things, I think there's maybe a pivot point there where your three linebackers now become Ernest Jones, Tyrese Knight, and Paul, and Drake Thomas becomes a practice squad, pull up occasional kind of guy. Because Paul is a bit bigger. I think Paul can do a couple things maybe a bit better than Drake Thomas can, just due to size. But I don't think Seattle's in a position where they're comfortable making that decision yet. To your point, Paul's got to prove that he can catch up, learn this defense, play fast, do all those things. And that's something he's got to prove over these next couple of weeks, which, as we know, is a lot harder during the season than it is in training camp, just due to limited practice times and things like that. So Ian Victor comes in. He goes, I feel that the Niners are going to decline more this season. That offensive line can be had even with Trent on that. I smell weakness on it. And that was one of my points in my season's prediction show or not season prediction show, but in my 3 keys to the game that'll release on Saturday, is that I think outside of Trent Williams, this line is very weak and kind of has a lot of areas where Byron Murphy, DeMarcus Lawrence, Jaron Reed, Boy Mafe, Derek Hall, if Chenna plays, they can all take advantage of it, and Leo as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like Dominic Pooney. I liked him in the draft last year a lot. He went about 7 spots before Christian Haynes. Things might have been a little different if he had been there at 81. But to your point, like Colton McKivitz, so didn't he say something during training camp this year that he expects to be an All-Pro this year? But 49er fans don't even think he should be on the roster. Like he hasn't been a popular guy there, and they haven't addressed it. Like there was an outstanding tackle class 2 years ago. They didn't go tackle there. They went wide receiver in the first round instead. They didn't really address it this year either. Like there's no contingency plan for if Trent Williams goes down or, Colton McKivitz doesn't play well. And I think he's at the end of his rookie contract too, isn't he? So, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there other than what they told us all offseason, and that the ownership was feeling like they needed to reel back on their cash spending and kind of have a reset year a little bit. And so they had to make some tough choices and let some guys go. But I think, when we talk about this a lot during draft season, right, there's that old adage, don't scout the helmet, right? You don't give a guy a higher draft grade as a quarterback because he's wearing an Alabama helmet versus a East Carolina helmet, or, take your pick. But I think that's what's happening with the preseason picks and all the analysis I think too many people are just looking at the helmet and thinking about the history and the tradition and this idea that the 49ers being picked on a regular basis to finish second in the division, maybe win it, win 10, 11 games, make the playoffs. I don't know where that's coming from.
Yeah, the 49er love, I think, is just kind of residual. And to an extent, we kind of lived in that world a little bit post Super Bowls where our teams weren't as good and we started to decline, but people still, well, you got Russell and you got pieces of the Legion of Boom still around, right? Like those years following that Super Bowl loss, as much as that's a painful thing to discuss, we kind of lived off of that. And I feel that's where the Niners are right now, is they're living off of what they have accomplished in the past more than what team they are currently as constructed. Yeah. So I agree to that point with you on that, Dan. And so Curtis Allen, love having Curtis in here. And guys,
what's up, Curtis?
And everyone, if you are into salary cap stuff like Dan alluded to earlier and over the cap and stuff, Curtis Allen is a must follow on X. He does an amazing job breaking down contracts, what potential contracts could look like for players. And so he says right here, I'd sign Woolen to the Daron Bland contract right now.
Which is,
and I'll get you to pull that
over
up.
The cap at the moment, because I was just checking because of that question from Rockman. It's about $25 million they have right now, but that's before the Lucas deal hasn't shown up yet. Bland was it 4 years, $90 million?
I think so, something like that. Yeah,
4 years, $90 million, 22.5 APY. Fully guaranteed $36 million. And it looks like, just looking at the structure, they can get out of the Bland deal in 2028, 8.8 million dead, 17.6 savings. It's a lot of money to spend. The cap hits are 5.8 this year. It's the last year of his rookie deal. And then 17.4, 17.4, 26.4, 28.4. That's manageable.
All right, and we'll get to a couple more comments, guys, and we'll wrap this show up because I know Dan's got his own show going on tonight. So we'll wrap this up here shortly. So I'd rather be flying an X-Wing, who, again, we met at Fast Fashion Brewing for our live show, goes, guys, I think the Hawks are the 49ers are a glass cannon this year. Dangerous if they can hold together, but once they start to crack, who knows? And that's a fair point. I think they're kind of that. I think they are that. To me, they're like when you get that chip on a windshield and you're like, look at it and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not going to spread across. And then one slight bump or one slight pressure change, and all of a sudden it's right across your entire windshield of your car. And you're going, great. Now I got to really go get this replaced because I can't drive with it the way that it is.
Still have a tremendous amount of respect for Kyle Shanahan and, that scheme that he runs. And I always remind myself whenever I think of dismissing a team or discounting a team, and that's not what I'm doing here. I'm just questioning why it's assumed that they're going to be as good as they are with all the question marks on that roster. But I think of, the Rams 2 years ago too. I thought they were going to fall off a cliff, and look what they did, after Aaron Donald retired and they went super, super young on defense, and look what they did. So good coaches usually figure out a way to get their guys to play their best. And I'm certainly not writing them off. I am extremely confident in the matchup on Sunday. and just our strengths against their weaknesses and just our continuity, how much of our roster's back, the positive signs we saw from the offense leading into this game, that I'm extremely confident in how Sunday is going to go. But to be honest with you, I have no idea what this 49ers team is going to look like. Shanahan's a great coach. They could win 11 games. They could lose 11 too.
And that actually goes right into it. I'd rather be flying an X-Wing. Second point, he goes, how bad do you think the 49ers season would have to be for them to move on from Shanahan? It's actually interesting because Rob Staten brought that up on the show I recorded with Rob, where he says Kyle looks tired. He just doesn't look as energetic as he used to.
He's aged in the last couple
he
years.
has it. He has aged. And, you know, if it goes poorly this year, I could see him maybe stepping away for a year and getting recharged. I could see it and going somewhere else and somewhere fresh. Like if they say they are I don't know, Dan, say they finish 6 wins or less, I think there will be significant changes down there.
I'm going to say something that might sound really strange to some people, but I think he's got a lot of excuses built in. I think, you know, the fact that they basically kind of pulled a John Stanton, Jerry DiPoto move on him this offseason and just kind of pulled a lot of the financial rug out from underneath him, and that they had to really dial that back and tighten the purse strings. I think there's some baked in excuses if things go off the rails again this year, that they can convince themselves that, hey, we'll be right back next year. We can be a little more aggressive, have a good draft, whatever. I think there might be a better chance of him losing his job if they were to get to the playoffs again and then fall short, you know, kind of the sort of the Ohio State, I can never beat Michigan, so the coach gets fired even though he wins 10, 11 games every year sort of situation. I think if they have another terrible season, it would be awfully hard, I think, to blame it on Shanahan.
No, and that's fair. So, all right, guys, I think we're going to wrap that up, everybody, for today's quick little reaction show that was only supposed to be about 30 minutes and we went an hour. This always seems to happen to us, Dan. We always go over the time that we kind of allot to it. But, Dan, what upcoming content do you have coming out on Seahawks Forever once you get all situated down there back in West Virginia?
Right. Well, hopefully tomorrow we'll have the green screen back. It's not quite here yet, so we'll get that taken care of. Sorry for the vanilla look. Literally the vanilla look in the background. So as soon as we're done here, I'm going to knock out my full reaction to the Abe Lucas signing, including 10 key points. You know, I mentioned when we talked about at the very top that there's layers to this that extend even beyond this year. I've got 10 reasons this was a great signing. You know, we usually do 3 or 5 in the podcast world. I came up with 10, so we're going to do that. And then tomorrow, we still have to work it out, looking to launch the NFC West mixtape with Rob Guerrero, the Gold Standard Network, and do a preview show for the 49ers with that, and just moving forward. So look for my new episode at some point tonight. I've got some things to work out in order to get that uploaded with my equipment all being moved and everything. And then I've got some new sponsorships that I got to work out all the details and make sure that I know, you know, how everything is supposed to look before I record the show, but that'll be next.
That sounds great. And for you guys over here on the Hawks side, I've got a show coming out with Jason Aponte, Sprint Right Option podcast, and that'll be airing Friday. We'll be going and discussing kind of the 49ers Seahawks preview. My 3 keys to a Hawks victory will air Saturday morning. It's about a 10-minute video, guys. It'll be my 3 keys on how the Seahawks pull out a victory over the 49ers with my score prediction. And then, as always, Sunday night live, 7:30 p.m., me and Mookie Alexander will break down our post-game show for the Hawks 49ers game. And then Monday live, we'll have Seahawks Aftermath with Michael Thompson. So a bunch of stuff coming up between our 2 shows, guys. So make sure you have that notification button clicked. Subscribe to both channels if you haven't. And as always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.